Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, pivoters. Wherever you're dialing in from today, welcome to The Lounge. Today I have Clayton Korn, a guest and also a fellow resident of Austin. He is here in the business aviation industry with me, but he wasn't always. He spent over 20 years in the entertainment industry, both as a musician and a producer, and was on the voting board for the Grammys. It is a pleasure to have him here today as we talk about pivoting through careers and how what you start out doing may not be what you end up with later in life, and why that is the most exciting thing that you could ever imagine. Clayton, it is wonderful to have you on the show with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so we met through a friend of ours, Chuck, and through the South Texas Business Aviation Association. And, when I was going through getting ready for the episode, I saw that you had, the Chaos Maestro on your
Maestro of Mayhem.
Oh, Maestro of Mayhem. Yes. Okay. Well, you can see where my mind is going. It's going to the chaos. Tell me why you chose this name for yourself in the role of COO. I want to know more about that.
So it was the Maestro of Mayhem came from my work in the entertainment business as a producer for the air show that we did in San Marcos for the last few years. And it just became pretty evident early on in the planning phases that this is going to be an exercise in chaos management for sure. So anyway, we were coming up with funny names for each of our positions, all of the leadership in that. I landed on the Maestro of Mayhem for myself, and it was a truer moniker could not have been bestowed because it was it really is in the world of large events, especially one as hectic as an air show. It's a lot, but it's a lot of fun too.
Absolutely. Right. And we can look at it from both perspectives. And I love that you went through this exercise with the entire leadership team to create these names for yourself, because it really helps you to embody a different kind of energy and to take something that's chaos is stressful, right? It's tiring. And yet you were able to turn around and have fun with it instead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. So tell me, I know you've been flying a pilot for a very long time, but how did you begin your journey? Let's hear about the arc from getting into entertainment, being a musician, playing the piano, and then shifting into deciding aviation was the full-time passion for you.
Sure. We can do the whole life story, but the shortest version I can tell is that growing up, I grew up in rural West Texas, and a lot of my neighbors had small planes. It was just kind of a way to get around. And my next door neighbor had a Cessna 210, I remember, and the first airplane ride that I went on as a kid, other than maybe a commercial flight, was when I was maybe 8 years old. Jerry took me up in his 210, me and my dad, and I'll just never ever. It's burned into my memory. We were taking off to the southwest. To the southwest as the sun was rising in the east, and just the looking down and watching the shadow of the airplane separate from the airplane, and realizing that you're in the air, it still is an emotional moment for me. So we went flying, fell in love with it, and maybe had an opportunity or two in high school to do some of the stuff for it, but it's something that I never pursued then, because by the time I got to high school, it was a small town, middle of nowhere. And I decided, I didn't decide, I learned pretty early on that if I was ever going to get a date, it wasn't going to be because I was a star football player or a basketball player. It was because I, could do something unique, which happened to be piano or, music. I kind of had a natural ability. And my parents I was blessed with parents that fostered that as a kid, and was able to chase that dream a little bit. And so, I went off to college and studied music, and then wound up moving to Nashville via several other avenues before that. But anyway, I wound up in Nashville in the late 90s. And then when 9/11 happened, it actually sort of spurred, I'd always had an interest in getting my pilot's license, obviously, from when I was a kid. But 9/11, when it happened, I just kind of had the thought that maybe they'd make it a lot more difficult for a regular Joe Blow to go get his pilot's license without having to go through a whole flight school or do the Part 141 thing. And so I just, kind of in the shadow of that, I called up the local flight school there at the International Airport in Nashville, and I started flying. And I don't know, it took me 6 or 9 months and got my pilot's license. That was in 2002, I want to say. And so I've been a pilot for 22 years. I guess it's weird to say that, but and then, you know, I chased my dreams through Nashville. I lived in, I've been here in Austin now for almost 2 decades. And so I had a family, and I decided to get off the road and decided to quit traveling, which was a big contingent of what I was doing as a musician. So I started an events company here in Austin. It was really fun. You know, air show being one. I did a bunch of stuff for some politicians. I've done some stuff for charities, and everything was going great until COVID hit. And when COVID hit, the entire entertainment industry just completely fell apart. Yeah. And so my events all went away, and I'm kind of sitting there trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. And I was like, you know, if there's a time to pivot, now's the time. And you know, I'd owned a couple of airplanes and whatnot. And through that, I got to know this group that I'm working with now. And I called them up and I said, hey, is there any opportunity for me to maybe come on board and see what we can do? And thankfully they agreed. And so here I am. And so in my role here now, I do fly. I'm a commercial pilot with them, but I'm also, I do sales and marketing for the company. We do jet brokerage and charter brokerage as well. So that's kind of my role.
And here being Apex Flight Solutions.
Apex Flight Solutions, yes, based at Austin Executive. Mm-hmm.
And I love that your pivot after or / during COVID was actually to aviation, because that was actually a time when a lot of people within aviation were finding themselves without a position. A lot of jets weren't flying. You know, I was based in Asia at the time. So all of the aircraft, they left, got out of Dodge, and people were not able to have the same role and position. And yet here you were thinking, well, events are done. Now is my time to go into flying. And you made some phone calls and you created this opportunity for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't quite as cut and dry as that. You know, I had been looking at making the move for a little while, you know, prior. And so it really was just kind of the catalyst I needed to make the jump.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it wasn't just that, you know, hey, I am left with a big decision to make. It just kind of made the decision was made for me, if that makes sense. Yes. And I just can't imagine having gone anywhere else. I can't imagine having, you know, going and getting trained up to be a computer programmer like that. Just never. It wasn't within my sphere of interest. It wasn't within my sphere of ability. And so, you know, it was just kind of a natural progression. And yeah, it was a little weird when people are getting grounded. To go and say, hey, I'm going to do this, but it also opened up, you know, a lot of opportunity. And it was never to be a pilot for me. It was just to be involved with the aviation industry, and that's what I think you know, we've landed at, and it's a neat place to be.
Yes, I love the aviation metaphors. I get real punny, so you know, and it's also a beautiful perspective to offer those who might be watching that you can love aviation and you can be involved and you don't have to be a pilot, right? Yeah. A lot of people have this mindset of, well, I'm not a pilot. I didn't go to flight training school, or I don't want to be a flight attendant, but there are so many more roles and so many subsections within aviation, within the airlines, within business aviation, airport management, you know, you name it, building the aircraft, designing the aircraft, fueling them. There are so many things that you can do and be in this exciting industry. And it's really just opening up your mind and starting to explore. So when you were initially looking at how you might enter, what were some of those first steps for you?
Well, a lot of it was knowing people in the business, right? So I don't know that I would have landed on my feet. I hate to keep using the same metaphor, but would have landed on my feet over here if it had been something that was just a cold plunge that, you know, just, right. Hey, just jump in and start sending resumes. Nothing in my resume says I can do anything in the aviation industry. If you know, look at other than maybe some, you know, some organizational stuff. But you know, just the fact that I knew the folks and I knew who I was dealing with, and, you know, and it's that way within the industry, and it's that way, you know, if you're, you know, moving from healthcare into whatever, you know, you need to know people over where you're going before you can plan to be successful. And I just happen to have a great little network that I was able to exploit.
Well, what I'm hearing is that because you had this interest, you pursued opportunities to connect with people in the industry, and you cultivated and nurtured those relationships so that when the time came, you were able to go, hey, this is my position. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I can do and how I can add value. And then that led to a series of conversations, which then led to conversion and an opportunity that became a job for you.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good information.
Beautiful. Yeah. No, I always like to remind people that the network is your net worth is a phrase we hear all the time, right? But it's like an ATM. As much as I would love to draw $1 million out of the ATM right now, that's just not going to happen, right? Unless the banks have a glitch, or some Nigerian prince wants to send me all his money on an email. This is not the reality. And so for me, if you're networking and you're trying to cash out, but you haven't put anything in, it's not going to work. But
That's
if you just go one step at a time and you go, hey, that looks interesting. I've never heard of that job before, or I've never heard of this company. And you take time to get to learn and meet the people, go to a local aviation event. Here in Texas, we have the South Texas Business Aviation Association. There's North Texas. There's a National Business Aviation Association and so many other ones in between, right? Women in Aviation, the maintenance organizations. And this is how you can start to learn, because sometimes we think that we want something or that we want that job, but the reality of that job is not how we would prefer to live our lifestyle or live day to day.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So when we talk about identity, what was that identity shift for you? We talked a little bit before about this being a malleable concept, right? And obviously as you pivot and you go from something like entertainment and I'm a musician, I'm a producer, to now I'm an aircraft sales broker, I'm a pilot. What are those, what was that like for you? And how did you find that transition of your mindset difficult or hard to kind of label yourself in one way?
I think the idea of letting go of your original identity, right? So especially someone who grows up doing something, there's a lot of finding yourself in college and trying, hitting a career path and all that. For me, literally from the time I was 5 years old, I was playing the piano. And so, all through school, all through high school and whatnot, I was the kid who played the piano. I was the kid who played the piano. And then I became the man who played the piano. And that was just sort of how at least the people in my sphere knew me. They know me as that. And, a lot of them still refer to me as, I'm still, a musician. And I still am a practicing. I get out and I play a little bit here and there and record. Beautiful. But the biggest hurdle, I think, and I think we touched on this a little bit when we started, and it can be that way with aviation. When you're so in love with what you do, it's very difficult to not tie yourself to that as your central identity.
Right.
And so, for a long time, that was who I was. But the older I got, the more I realized that maybe it would be cooler if I were the guy who could play the piano at a party instead of the guy who does play piano at the party, right?
Right.
And then there's just a lot of freedom in that, because you get to the point that I just got to the point where I didn't want my identity to be solely tied to what to what I have normally done. Yeah. And then it was just sort of forced, it forced my hand, like we talked about with COVID, and but there's, especially with musicians, and I'm sure the same can be said of pilots or people who are just really tied to a sort of talent. When it comes to your career, it's very difficult to extricate yourself from that emotionally.
Absolutely. I mean, that is your core identity. I mean, I always talk about my first big pivot was the identity of I am a figure skater, a high level competitive athlete, and I'm going to the Olympics, to I don't skate anymore. So what am I? Right. And then becoming this person in aviation and an expat in Asia. And then same thing, COVID happened. I'd been about 9 months, 10 months thinking like, oh, I think I need to change. And then COVID helped make that decision for me. It was the catalyst for me to step into the entrepreneurship. And it's always a bit uncomfortable at first, but the more you can play with the perspective, it's like I just got these new from the New York Public Library, these new blue light glasses. They're fantastic. But just like the light is giving me a little bit of a glare, right? But when I put these on, I'm like, I can be whoever I want to be, especially when I'm on a plane and I'm flying somewhere, like nobody knows who I am. I could be like whatever personality, and I could just play a little into it, and, feel like really sophisticated with my coffee, and it's fun, right? It can be fun. It doesn't have to be this problematic thing. And so I encourage everybody watching to play a little bit, try on a new personality, a new dress differently. When we dress different, we act different. Have you experienced that?
Oh yeah, look at me now. This is me.
Yeah.
This is me getting dressed up for
you look super cool. I love it because you've got like that kind of little bit of corporate, but then there's a little bit of cowboy, and then this like skater hat. It's there's a lot going on. It's fun. Yeah.
But no, I totally agree. You dress different. That dressing to dress. How do I put this? It's I always feel better when I'm dressed nicely, and
Yes.
I'm always more confident, than
Right.
showing up in a t-shirt. So.
Right. And then you can create a signature look. It can be that's the thing you do. Like I wear Vans all the time, right? Unless it's really cold and I have to put boots on my feet. But, there's these little things that you can do, and then recognize, I'm not sure. Will I have this hair forever? I don't know. I mean, the short hair, I have to say, ladies, you save so much time. I don't know what I was doing, spending an hour with my hair every single day. Like this is so much better. But, it's these different identities, and that just goes to show. I mean, our brains are plastic, right? Neuroplasticity. We can learn new things. We can learn new skill sets. We can also learn to be different in how we show up and how we present ourselves day to day for the different roles that we play, right? The Clayton that shows up as a friend versus a musician for a paying gig as a musician versus an aircraft sales broker is going to be different, as a husband, as a son. All of these roles that we play are different, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're pretending or that you're not your full self. It's just we bring different energy to different situations.
Sure. Absolutely.
Amazing. So when we think about the role that you're in now, aviation is a highly technical field. There's a lot of safety and a lot of regulation. There are problems and challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis, being in a 24/7 environment, obviously public scrutiny, environmental, et cetera. And the list can go on. And whether you're in manufacturing, you're in marketing, you're in sales, you're working on a TV show, you're going to come up with challenges. How have you found the creative pursuits and the allowance of that in your life helping you come up with solutions and solve problems differently than when maybe you forget your creative practices and you kind of let them slide a little bit? Do you notice a difference?
I suppose, but I think that maybe isn't how I frame it. So I think we are who we are. Right. I mean, and that's not to say that we're not plastic. We can certainly adjust. We can learn new things. We can learn new skills and whatnot. I think that one reason that I have succeeded to the extent that I have in the aviation business is that, carrying over the creative part of it, carrying over that creative part and being able to, when you get in a room, they're great entrepreneurs and and everyone that surrounds me by and large very creative. There are a lot of engineers. And sometimes it's difficult for an engineer to think about things outside of the engineering box, Right. And for me, it's just coming in from, because I am inherently creative, I guess, I can get in a room and I can think about things a different way, or I can present things a different way. I'm good with people, so maybe I can help us as a group understand our customer a little bit better, and figure out ways that we can convey information, good, bad, or indifferent. We can convey that to them in a way that's palatable. And I think that that's a lot of what we do. We deal with huge numbers. That's in the aviation industry. I mean, to me, it's just monopoly money that sometimes. The number of zeros that are attached to these transactions that we're doing. And you can't be superficial with that stuff. And so for me, it's not the same as selling a Toyota. We're out
Right.
here, and so respecting the client in a way, and explaining to them, where we are on things. And I don't know, it's just having the creative aspect to be able to sort of maybe package it a different way and send it, or just, maybe put it in a different perspective has served me well.
Beautiful.
And I think,
Yeah. And, I think I always like to reframe the word creative for people, because an engineer might say, well, I'm not creative. But if they have created an algorithm or a process flow, and it's efficient, yes, it's a technical workflow, and it's, numbers and Excel spreadsheets, which I know light them up. Thank God, because it does not light me up. Right. I could become skilled at it, but I would hate every single second. And that's okay. Right. But that is still creation. That is still being creative and finding pathways that I wouldn't be able to find. Right. So it's really important that we have all these different personalities and mindsets with each other, so that we can then tease out, right, in the conversation, in the finding of solution, these different perspectives, which can then allow us to connect dots from a nonlinear perspective, rather than, oh, I must go in this formulaic one by one formula, right?
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, just being able to stop and say, it comes really from music production for me. From music production for me. So just, there may be some folks who don't know kind of what the process is, but if you're in a music production setting, let's just say we're going to have a recording session. If I'm the producer of the session, my formula, if you will, is to have all of the musicians in at their place. We'll all listen to a piece of music one time. We'll make our notes and whatnot, and then we'll play it. And if it's not working, we figure out what works, and you work through that. And it's simply just coming up with different parts and different ideas, and working as a team to come up with something that ultimately is a presentable package. And I think it's a lot of that's the same over here. And I think that process for me, drawing from that process in my past, has really helped me in where we are now. It's just being able to pick the parts and put them in place and make it work.
Right.
Like
so
you would.
you're kind of taking all the puzzle pieces out on the table and then moving them around where they fit, because you're getting that different perspective by having it all there, rather than looking at each piece individually and then having to try to figure it out later.
Yeah. And I guess where I'm going with that is to say that, if you have an artist or you have a singer that you're doing work with, and they have a preconceived idea, and they come in, and then, and it's not, they're not hearing what they were expecting to hear. Which then you're able to just sort of tweak one part or create, hey, what about this idea, and then for it just all light up and it all works, it's sort of the same way over here. It's if you, sometimes it's just that one piece of the puzzle that, it takes a creative brain to come up with, to plug in, and it's all of a sudden it all works, and
right.
It's just a neat place. It's a neat perspective.
Yeah, that's a beautiful perspective. And it's also, I like what you touched on there, is the expectation that we go into situations with, right?
That's right.
And when we are looking at a pivot, especially if it's a major one, whether it's, a career pivot or a personal pivot, moving to a different state, a different country, changing not only jobs, but career fields, maybe joining into a marriage with somebody, or exiting that marriage, right? All of this comes with big identity upheaval and change. But when we can slow down and give ourselves that new perspective, then we can get the reframe, right? We have the opportunity to have a reframe so that we can experience it in a different way.
Yeah, that's right.
Beautiful. I love that. Well, Clayton, it has been really wonderful to have you on the show today. I really hope that we've inspired some people to think a little bit differently about their current positions and how they might be able to take other aspects of themselves from their personal lives into their professional lives, and vice versa, so that they can begin to play a little bit with these different perspectives and see what pivots, even small ones, right? We don't have to pivot and change our job, right? We don't have to pivot and change industries. We can simply pivot a behavior or a thought process or something that we want to bring into our lives or get rid of in our lives, right? Stop wasting energy on junk food or, saying, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. And so hopefully this new look at how creativity can help us in that endeavor and how we can apply these different kind of hats, if you will be beneficial to everybody.
I agree.
Clayton, if people would like to get in touch with you to learn a little bit more, or perhaps even seek some mentorship from you, where can they get in touch?
Yeah, email me at clayton@apexflightsolutions.com. I would give out my phone number, but I don't know how appropriate that is. Email me first, and I'm happy to share.
All right, I'm going to put that up there for everybody. We have some feedback from some live watchers saying a really great discussion and good takeaways, and thank both of us. So thank you so much for everybody joining us live. Again, Clayton at apexflightsolutions.com. You can also connect with him on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions, whatever platform you're watching this on, just go ahead and comment, tag me, and either Clayton or myself will make sure to get back to you with an answer. Clayton, thank you again. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Sarah. This was wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And frequent flyers, please stay tuned for the next episode of The Lounge. We have some really exciting guests coming up. I just love the energy. If you are interested in being a guest as well, please contact me at sarah@sarahcalmetta.com. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.